Hello everyone, welcome to Create with Chris. I am live at Cupboard Distributing here in Urbana, Ohio, where the sun is gorgeous and it's a beautiful day. Today we are going to be painting a super fun project, Lucky Clover or Lucky Ticket, just in time for St. Patrick's Day. We have a lot of really fun things lined up today, so stay tuned. Let's go over here to me. Hello, I am Chris Hoy. I am the owner and founder of Cupboard Distributing, the scrapbook outlet, pixelated palette, easing, Chris Hoy Designs, busy gal. I love to paint. This is my life. This is what I do. And for those of you that have the same love of painting, you understand exactly what I mean. But I am a busy gal, so sometimes it's just really fun to do something that is just quick and easy. You can sit down and create it. It's what I call a little mini painting vacation. So that's kind of what we're doing today. Every now and then you just need a break from serious focused painting and just kind of let your hair down, really enjoy the love of colors and playing around with them and creating something fun. And this doesn't take very long to do, so it's a project that you can make it as detailed as you want or keep it simple and really crank through it. Because I am a decorative painter, it's really hard for me to just stencil a design and move on, and they always get on me here at work because they're going, Chris, you need to quit doing all those little details. You just make it too complicated. But that's what I enjoy. So make it your own. If you want to add all the little details, I think I give a big green light. But if you want to hone back and just make it kind of simplistic, that's kind of what's in style right now. Just the simple stencil and the kind of distressed background. It's just very trendy. I like to do a little bit more, and that's the decorative painter in me. And if you are one as well, you understand exactly what I mean. So let's go ahead and get started. Well, got to push the right button the right way, I guess. This is the 4-leaf clovers ticket, and I just thought this was a fun design for St. Patrick's Day. I kept it really simple. We just have 4 colors of paint. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, 4 colors of paint, and that is Hauser dark green, light lime, sour apple, and leaf green. Just kept it all in the leprechaun family, so we can have that super green. And these are colors that some of them I don't hardly ever use. The sour apple and leaf green, they're not in my first choice list of colors, but they're so beautiful. And I was really impressed. I love to impress myself when I use a color I'm not familiar with and I'm going, oh wow, that's super gorgeous. Alrighty, so we started out with, I have an MDF plaque. This is the postage stamp, and I just have it base coated in the light lime. Now, DecoArt's, all of their colors are not readily available at this point. You just need a light green. So take any of these greens. Of course, the darker it is, the more you'll have to add, but just put a little white in it and lighten it up. We're decorative painters. We can handle just about anything. There's no stopping us when we want to paint. And I just put on a nice base coat. Actually, I'm a little bit, I don't have a whole lot of light lime left. I knew it was going to take a couple coats, so what I did was I base coated it in, I had another light green, I can't remember, soft sage I think is what it was. I base coated it in that so I didn't have to use nearly as much of my paint. And that way it kind of reserves the colors you're a little bit short on. You know, use a different base coat so you can kind of save a little bit on your paint. Now we want to create this glow kind of background. I love doing it. Now you could just go ahead and kind of stencil the background and put your lettering on and go with that. But I wanted to build it up and create kind of a depth or a glow to it. And I am using, I love this brush. This is the Jo Sonja 3/4 inch oval wash. It's a super soft brush, Kind of reminds me of a blush, you know, like for makeup, just super soft. Because it's so soft, when you apply the paint, you have very minimal strokes on it. So it's just really easy to move the paint around and get a nice soft wash. And I am going to work this rather quickly. See, I don't know if I can go out a little further. There we go. All right. I'm going to move around kind of quickly. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time. This is a fun project, so we're just going to have fun and not dilly-dally. I'm just going to start with sour apple. And I'm not much into bright colors. If you like bright colors, you're going to love this one because it is just absolutely almost a neon, super, it just almost has a glow to it. My brush is wet. I don't know if you can see how much wet it is, but I dipped it in and I just kind of wiped it on my, the lip of my brush basin just to get heavy water out, but I want enough water in it that it's going to be very movable. And when I load my brush, I really work the paint into the bristles. Don't just dip it in there and get a glob on the end of it and expect it to do great things. Got this wonderful brush with all these bristles in it. It's meant to hold paint, so I'm really going to work that in there. And I'm going to start on the edges, kind of work toward the center, doing a slip slap, which is kind of, it's a crossover stroke. Just going to start around the edge and work really quickly. I'm using my wrist. My whole arm is moving. And I'm going to clean my brush a little bit, soften that center, load it up again, really work that paint in, and start over here and kind of slip slap that. Now you still see brush strokes. I don't know how well they're showing on camera. I have Jen over here on my left side. She's answering questions and kind of following the conversation. So if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them, and she will answer them or send them on. And you can see how quickly I covered that. Now, if you're painting along with me, I'll give you a second to catch up. I zoom in a little bit. Okay, you can see the brush strokes, but it's not spotted. It's kind of a washy brush stroke. That's what you want. You don't want it to be real heavy and spotted. Is that better or worse? No, definitely. I have a light down here. I want to make sure that's going to help or hinder. It seems a little dark, but I think some of it is the green with the camera sometimes doesn't show up as strong.
It looks fine over here.
Okay, Jen said it looks fine. You need to let that dry for a minute. While we're letting that dry, thank you all for coming here today and joining me. This is a fun time that I get to share some little quick tips and techniques and hopefully make your painting life a little bit easier. Also today, we are going to be giving away a door prize. And this is a set of brushes. Did you hear Jen? Yay! Jen loves to give things away. She said, okay, we have to do this. So we have 3 of the awesome Jo Sonja brushes that any painter would love to have. So we will be giving these away. And we were trying to figure out how we're going to draw a name for a door prize. So here's the deal. If you paint this project, post it on Facebook, on Cupboard Distributing's page, or tag us with a little hashtag thing. We'll go over here. That's drying. Okay. Tag it with a little hashtag Cupboard Distributing, and then out of all the names that post, we'll pick a random winner, and you can win this set of 3 really fantastic brushes.
They're excited for our giveaway.
Yay! And you know, if they're Jo Sonja brushes, they are good brushes. I switched over to Jo Sonja a few years ago, and I am just ecstatic. I think it made me a better painter. I didn't realize what a difference having a really good brush makes. And if you're struggling, oh, I have a cute story to tell. My granddaughter is kind of spoiled because I give her really nice brushes to paint with. She's 10 years old, and she went over to paint with a friend of hers, and they had what's a good word, dollar store brushes. And she came back and she said, "Mommy, I couldn't believe how awful I was painting." She said the brushes just weren't working. And her mom said, "You know what? Grandma gives you really good brushes and you are spoiled." So even a 10-year-old realizes the difference between a really good brush and one that just gets the job done. All right, while we're waiting for that to dry, I'm gonna switch over here. I am teaching a class Friday, and I am so excited about this class because this is such a cool project. I was playing around and I created almost everything with one brush. Actually, I used this brush and my Radical Round. So all of this is created with just these two brushes and I think an angle. So super fun project. This is Friday's class. It's called Home Sweet Home, but we're doing that faux background with the chipped edge paint on it. Dropping in these shadows to give a little more realism. There's that faux wood grain, some stenciling with some tricks on stenciling. Super fun class. I'm excited about doing that this coming Friday. So that is, let me pop this in there. Sometimes you see, whoops, there we go. Friday, March 12th from 12 noon to 4. So that gives you West Coast gals time to get out of bed. Okay, we are dry here. So we are going to add another coat of paint on there, another layer. We want to build that glow up. And as we start adding layers, you can see why I'm not real concerned that this isn't so perfect and smooth and even. You have to learn when to back off and when to pay attention to being fussy. I have leaf green. This is another color that's not in my normal palette of colors that I use, go-to colors. But this is really pretty. Again, I am just loading the brush up. It's wet. And this is a darker color. So when I'm going to do the same thing, I'm going to go around the edges and kind of blend it toward the center. Because this is a darker color, I'm not going to be quite so quick and slap happy. I'm going to just be a little more control on this. And once my brush starts to fade out, I'll just go back with a little bit of a lighter stroke and see how soupy this is. Just a little too wet. So I'll just go back and kind of push that paint around. And you can move that paint quite a bit. If you get a stroke in there you're not happy with, just blend it out. You can always go back and add more. That's my motto. You can always go back and add more. A little bit of paint's going to make a big difference. And you see my whole arm is moving, maybe not, but I don't have it anchored down anywhere. Let it just have a light grip on your brush. Pretty good control. You don't want to lose control of what you're doing. You have to work quickly so it doesn't set up. And I'm just blending it all together. We'll get a nice light coat. Now once it starts to tack up, you have to leave it alone. So I probably could go back and add a little bit more. I think this side looks a little darker because it was a little bit wetter and heavier. I'm going to give a little bit of a quick dry here, and I'm using the Ranger Heat It tool. Absolutely love this. It's super hot. It dries quickly, and it's not so horribly loud and noisy. Make sure it is dry because you know if you put that next layer on and it's a little bit wet, you're going to be going, oh no, because it'll dig it all up and kind of create a disaster. Just gonna grab a little bit more paint, darken this side up because it's a little bit lighter than the other side. Not a lot, just enough to even it out. And you can see how it starts to become very soft all the way across. I love the stroke work in the background. If you're not crazy about that and you want it a little bit softer, more water to slow down and kind of blend it in just a little bit more. I like that. It gives, to me, it looks like movement in the background. And we don't want to get this too terribly dark because we want to add all these layers on top. If your background is too dark, what you're going to end up doing is having it so dark that it makes it difficult to create that contrast so these other elements really pop out. Grabbing just a little bit of Hauser dark green, and I want to, that's funny, I squirted it out and it came out really blue, but I think it's just, I have to shake it up. When I did the base coat, I mixed a little bit of this light lime and it came out too yellow green, and I was trying to figure in my mind what to add to it to make it more green instead of yellow green. And I thought, well, yellow and blue make green, so if it's too yellow, I put just a teeniest drop of blue in there and it was perfect. So all of that mixology class comes in handy. 3/4 inch angle, another Jo Sonja brush that I absolutely love. Loading the toe with Hauser dark green, and I'm just going to kind of, I call this pat shaded around the outer edge. We just want to darken that outer edge, and I don't just pull it along, I kind of tap it. I like to bring it up a little bit into that background. It kind of helps blend it in. And again, we can always go back and add more. Don't get it so dark this first time around. You can see how that's starting to make that glow a little bit as you add the darkness around the outer edge. Such a pretty color with all these greens together. Who'd have ever thought? And I do think it's that neon green of that sour apple that really helps these colors just kind of, I'm trying to think of another word besides glow because I keep saying glow, but they really do glow. Okay, I'm just gonna let this go for now because I think I've got a lot of stuff going on here. I have a lot of shaded color from light to dark. And what you want to do is, if you have a background that's not real smooth and perfect, and you're going to add another design on it, like the clover leaves, all of a sudden what's going on behind it becomes very secondary. And with that same thought wave, once we put the lettering on, these clovers also become secondary. So every layer you add pushes that prior layer behind and makes it not quite such a focal point. I'm using the Clovers stencil, and I was thinking there were some other stencils that would look just as pretty. So if you don't have the Clovers stencil, don't worry about it. Look at what you do have. I thought this one would be a really pretty, to me that looks kind of Celtic or Irish. This one definitely does and would make a beautiful background stencil. So I think that's what's so much fun about this type of project, is the fact that you don't have to have specific anything. Everything will work if you just kind of play around with it. And that's what's nice about just this type of painting. You just get to relax and play. And I'm just going to grab a little bit of tape because I'm going to kind of dry brush stencil this on. I don't want it real heavy. We have this washy background thing going on, and I want to keep that same soft tone. I'm using my Spectacular stencil brush, super, super soft brush, and because it's soft, you get a really, almost an airbrush look. It's easy to achieve that effect. I'm going to be using leaf green, and one thing nice about my stencil brush, it doesn't matter if it's dry or wet, it will still work quite effectively.
Chris, Barb wants to know what the name of the other stencils were that you showed.
Okay, I'm gonna hand them to you.
Yep,
so
I'll
you-
put links in for them.
Okay. I think, is this the Celtic knot or macrame knot?
Macrame knot, and that one's the heart border, I think.
Heart border,
Scroll heart
okay.
border.
I like to use stencils that you can use over and over and over again. And that's why those stencils are just great ones to have on hand. They're also non-generic, if that's a good word for it. They don't, you don't have like Christmas stencil, or this one is definitely generic, or I guess generic. Non-generic. Anyways, this one's definitely St. Patrick's Day, whatever that is. Okay, I am working, and I did add a little water in my brush because this is old paint. By old paint, you can tell from the label, I've had it. These are the new labels, so I'm sure this is like 10 years old or so. Load the brush, and I'm just going to wipe it on my paper towel. I don't want heavy paint, so if I wipe my bristles over, it takes all that heavy paint that's on the tip of the brush. And when I go to stencil, I'm just going to have a very light touch, and so I'm kind of just, I'm going to wipe it down a little bit more. I don't want it quite that dark. Something fell over the edge. Every time something happens around here, we always say it was Grandma Mary because we have strange things that kind of happen. Okay, just kind of using a swirl. And it's just a real light touch, and you can see it's starting to evolve. Once I find out how much paint is in my brush, then I can get a little more aggressive with my swirling. Now, another thing too, because our edges are a little darker, I can add more color on these around the edges, and as I get toward the center, it's not going to take nearly as much. And it doesn't look like I'm doing much, but if you peel this back, look at that, that's so cool. It doesn't take much, and that's what I really like about dry brush stenciling. You can go rather quickly. You're gonna get a really nice crisp line because you don't have that fear of shoving the paint underneath the edges. You have such a light load of paint on your brush that it's not going to push under the edges, and that's usually what causes the paint to result in those uneven edges or blobby edges. And I'm just swirling, I'm not moving my wrist at all. I'm gonna need a little more paint. I always hate to reload toward the center because I want to keep that very light touch. I'm gonna start down here just in case. And we can peel it back and kind of look, ooh, it's so pretty. Now, I'm thinking right here, I'm just going to darken that one down a little bit in the corner so that it kind of stands out a little bit more. And right here is almost too light. See how it's getting a little stronger there? Now if I get it too dark, I can go back with a fine grit sandpaper, or if you're really careful, you can take a damp paper towel. and just kind of lightly lighten that up a little bit. Remember, this is a layer. So this is not the focal point. Again, if you get it too busy, you're going to have trouble with too much busyness with those letters. See if I can lighten that one down just a little. Yeah, it does take it down a little bit. You have to be careful. Don't rub too much. You could dig down below. So that easy. We've got those outside edges kind of gradiating toward the center lightness, and we've got this pretty background. We can add the lettering on. So something like this is good for any project. These washy layers and then a pretty stencil design is multifunctional. You can use it pretty much on any design. Now, if I had a real busy project, I probably would tone this down even more. And another thing you could do if it's too busy, just put a wash over top of it. I think on this one, I'm just going to add a little more shading around the outside edges. And I'll probably do that one more time before I'm finished with it. But can you see what a difference that makes? Just to add that little bit. I have such a glare on that, it's kind of hard to see. Now remember too, this isn't super dry, so you don't want to work it too heavy. Just like that, just kind of wash that in there, but it will push all of those clover designs back just a little bit more. You're creating a darker contrast around the edges, frames it in, just like, isn't that pretty? This would be pretty with bubbles, raindrops. Trying to think, a pretty flower background. Okay, we'll give this another shot. Don't forget, Jen's going to be giving away those brushes, so do your St. Patrick's Day project, post it online.
Make sure to tag us.
Yeah,
Make sure to
tag us on it as well. Okay, so we have this stencil, and it pretty much fits on here perfectly. And a good way to line it up, if you need to, get a ruler and measure side to side. I have a pretty good eye for lining it up, but I want to make sure that the top and the bottom line up. So you want to make sure from the top of this letter and the bottom of these, the Y and the P that hang down, are pretty much the same distance. And once we get that where it needs to be, I'm gonna use that tape. Just kind of add a little piece of tape on each one. Believe me, it's so well worth it to add a piece of tape because these things can shift around so easy, and what a mess. I'm not speaking from experience. Yeah, you know I am. Okay. We are going to start putting the letters in, and I am using this Hauser dark green. Let's see. Freshly picked, and the shamrocks are going to be the Hauser dark green.
What's another color that Patty could use instead of light lime?
You could lighten the leaf green with white. Soft sage is a light green. What's the other one here? Pistachio mint, I think, is a pretty green too. And if you don't have, go online and get one of these downloads from DecoArt. They have all their colors on it. And what's nice about it, if you don't have one color, you look and see what's around it and what's closest to it, And no, these are not true to the exact paint swatches, but they give you an idea of what is close to it, and that makes it super easy to substitute. Okay, we are using, I'm gonna do the freshly picked first. And I have my Painter's Pal. I like to use this. I could take tape and put tape over all this, but when I pull the tape off of these little letters, sometimes it pulls them up and bends them a little bit. So instead of using tape, I usually just pop this down, kind of mask it off. Okay, we are using the Hauser Dark Green. And just gonna work that into my bristles again. Grab my paper towel. And I always wipe this off because I don't want to have issues with it running under the stencil. And I'm just going to tap this on to get that color on there. I'm doing the wrong one. Let's go up here and do this one. Let's start at the top. And I am kind of tapping this on. Now, when you tap it on, just put a nice even coat, because if you keep working it really, really hard, you can push it under. So we want to just make sure we get a nice coverage. You can lift it up and peek and it'll look perfect. Every time you load your brush, make sure you go back and kind of tap that off. Let's do the Clovers. This is, I always think this is a practice in patience, because you just kind of need to watch what you're doing, and even though it's a simple technique of stenciling, don't take it too lightly. If you decide to kind of cut corners and overload your brush or go too quickly, you're not going to get that precise, crisp, clean edge that makes it look really nice and even. So just take your time, kind of enjoy not having to trace these out and paint them by hand. I always think about that because we all know how much fun that is. Before we started cutting our own stencils, for like different occasions like this, I would have stencils made just for my classes. And when I would teach a class that didn't have a stencil, everybody's going, "You didn't bring a stencil? You mean we have to paint it by hand?" And I remember the day when painting letters or anything with a stencil was kind of a big taboo. So we are spoiled with all of our wonderful painting tools.
Chris, Helen is asking, why are you tapping and not swirling for the darker color?
People do it different ways. I tap instead of swirling because when I go straight down, I know I'm getting a clean, crisp edge. If I swirl it with heavier paint on my brush, sometimes I push it under the edges. And this way I know I'm just getting a nice, crisp, clean edge. Does that make sense? Okay, the last little S here. And this will take 2 coats because we want a nice heavy dark coverage on this. Now, I want to do prosperity.
She said thank you.
And you know, stenciling is, I've taught a lot of different classes. Everybody has their own preference with painting, and stenciling is no different. So, you know, try different things and pay attention to how you do it and what works best for you. And if it doesn't work, try to figure out why it didn't. And maybe what you could do to make it work better. Stenciling is kind of a foolproof way of adding design if you play by the rules. And I found out the rules even apply to me. I sometimes think they don't, but they do. And you try to shortcut things, and you end up paying the price for it, because to try to clean up a mess is so much work. So you have to learn to be patient. And I skipped freshly picked and the shamrocks. Well, sort of kind of skipped it, but that one, I'm going to make that just a little bit lighter color. I want this to be nice and dark. So I'm going to switch over to leaf green. And I'm going to do the freshly picked in those colors.
They're either painting or really interested, because there's not very many comments today.
No
questions.
Okay, so here's the thing. Lindsay is sick today. So Jen is my right-hand man today.
You got the B team.
And so I got the B team. No, Jen was saying, oh my goodness, so you guys see they're being good for you.
They are. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Connie's asking, where did you get your color chart with the circles like that? The only one she's seen has small swatches.
The ones online are square. That one is the same thing. It's just round, and I ripped it out of their book. No, I removed it from the book.
We borrowed it.
Gently, because I was tired of having the book to flip through all the time. So it's in essence the same color chart. This one, the one in the book is round. The one online is rectangles or squares. Okay, we'll go in here and do these little shamrocks as well. And this is leaf green, so there'll be a difference in the shade of color on these. Okay, tippy tap, 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 tap. I want to go back just real quick and add a second coat on the darker colors.
Donna is asking what color green is on the words.
Hauser dark green on the dark ones and leaf green on the freshly picked and the shamrocks. Oh, and there's a free pattern online too. If you go online to Cover Distributing, there's a free pattern section. You can download the pattern for free.
The link is in the chat here.
Oh, okay, Lindsay. Jen put the link in the chat.
And Connie said, can you get the book? I don't think customers can get that book.
I don't know if DecoArt, I know when you go to a show, a convention, DecoArt has them and they pass them out, but I don't know what their protocol is for sending them to customers. You can ask. I don't know.
And what can they do? Tell you no?
Yeah, if they say no, they say no. But I did put mine in sheet protectors because I am a messy painter. And I know I would ruin it after a short time. Plus, sheet protector gives it a little more strength to it so it doesn't curl and all that jazz. Okay, I'm going to go a little faster because I've got my first coat on. It's not going to take as much. And we can go in and tap this out real quickly. While I'm doing this, I should talk about our Spring Fest that's coming up. And I have a paper here. Okay, I'll stick this in here. No, that's probably not very good. I should flip it over and let Jen do it real quick. We have Spring Fest coming up April 15th, 16th, and 17th. We have Sandy LaFleur, Marlene Fudge, Deb Mishma, and Sharon Cook, and myself. We're teaching 3 days of classes, and they are going to be, they're just super technique classes. So many fun things, and what's really cool, because we have such a variety of, teachers, we get such a variety of projects. This is my Bless This Home, and I used, we're painting a pretty doily, the leaf, we're doing some interesting effects with the crock. Love painting in pussy willows. This is such a cool, simple technique to create that. We did a little bit of stucco work in the background. Really nice rustic palette, maybe is a good word for it. I did use a stencil to make that lettering super, super easy. It's going to be a really fun class. And the other one I'm doing is Gnome Grown.
My favorite.
And that's Jen's favorite. But
I might steal it.
we have a really cool background. She's always stealing my stuff. See her there giggling. Yeah. This is going to be a fun class too. So these are, they just opened up for registration. Cupboard Distributing. If you go on our website, there is a link for Spring Fest. Also, I think Jem's going to pop that link in on the chat.
I did.
In addition to the classes, we're going to be having some giveaways, sales, kind of like a little mini convention for those of us that feel deprived because we can't go to convention right now. We had to do something to kind of make up for feeling a little bit neglected in that respect. So, okay, I think I'm looking pretty good here. Oh yeah. Oh, now see, look at the background. Do you notice the background? No, because we've done all this stuff on top of it. So all that messy stuff on the background that we might have been worried about, that I told you we weren't, is not a big deal now, because all of a sudden we're looking at this lettering. Now you can, if you want, or you don't have to. I kind of like to connect these letters so they look hand painted. And so I just am grabbing my radical round. I'm just going to connect right here where these, and it's still wet. I'm just laying my hand in the wet paint there. Make sure when you connect these that you remember when you did the stenciling you put 2 coats on. So don't expect it to just be perfect with 1 coat. I'm going to let that dry and add a 2nd coat. I'm going to go down here, kind of connect these, the O's kind of, I don't like that way they have that little divide in them. It's the only way that we can make a stencil and not have it fall apart. So we just connect that up a little bit, and it just gets rid of that look of a stencil. Some of these, like the top of the P, I'm okay with. May or may not bring that down. I just kind of look at them if they look like they need connected. And if it doesn't bother you, don't worry about it. Just be consistent. If you do 1 P, make sure you do all the P's. And that's kind of the rule with all painting, isn't it? You just want to be consistent. And I'll go do this O up here as well. And to me, it's the little details that make a difference. The little touches of paint that will take it from just a regular project to, wow, how did she do that? And we all like to hear that, don't we? Okay, I think that looks pretty good. And I don't know if you can tell the difference between this tone of green and the Clovers is so much darker. Just that subtle shade of difference of color really makes a difference on the project. I'm just gonna go back now and touch up the O where I put that first coat on. It's always worth that little bit of extra time that you put into it. Because you don't want to tell somebody, oh, I did this really quick, it didn't take very much time at all, and they're going, yeah, I know. You want them to say, oh, really? And sometimes your idea of a little bit of time and theirs is two totally different, but okay. So now we have a pretty good coverage. We've got the letters connected. They're all starting to look pretty good. But when I was doing this, I thought, you know, it just looked very flat and very dark. So we need to add brightness and color on this. And what I did was I took the light lime to do some highlights on it. And that's called, I know a lot of you already do this, but it's called shifting the stencil. So you line it up so it lines up perfectly. And it will, because that's where it was to begin with. Okay, we've got it lined up perfectly. We're going to drop it down just a smidge and over a smidge. Can you see that little crack? And definitely anchor that thing down. So you see that little crack there. You want to see that little bit of edge. Now I'm definitely going to have to clean my brush out because we're going with a lighter color of paint. I'm not a patient person, so when I designed my stencil brush, I wanted a brush that I could wash out and go right to the next color without having to wait for it to dry. I didn't want to have to clean out 20 brushes at the end of the day. One brush is quite enough. But you need to remember you don't want a wet brush, so towel dry it nice and dry. And then we're going to go into that light lime. Now the thing is, we're putting light lime over top of a dark color. It's going to take a couple coats, maybe 3 coats. How many will it take for sure? Use your eyes. Look at it, you can tell. If it's not covering well, you'll be able to tell. I'm going to load this up. Gosh, I'm being real stingy on my paint here. Okay. I'm going to load this up, work that paint into the bristles, and then gently just dry brush over that paper towel to get rid of that heaviness. You can see it on here. I don't have any heavy paint on there. It's just a real soft little bit of paint. And I keep telling you I'm a messy painter, so I'm going to put this painter's pal down just to make sure I don't go too heavy. I have a very light touch. And I know it's going to take a couple coats. You can barely hear it touching. Kind of just letting the brush hit without, I'm not pressing down at all. And I'm not going to go fast because that's when you get in trouble. I have a very light touch. I'm barely holding onto my brush. Once you start grabbing that brush with a death grip, everything starts looking forced. Take your little finger up, that might help too. Just tap that on there. Just want to get a nice first coat on there, pretty even. And I'm going to go down here and do this one as well. Now that I'm down here, you might hear me, I'm tapping a little bit harder. I've got the heavy paint off, I've not reloaded, so I know what's in my brush. And once you understand how your brush is loaded, you're able to control it a little bit better. But I'm still a messy painter, so I'm going to put that there. It's all these little things you do. I know I'm messy, so to keep from stenciling where I shouldn't, I always use my little tool here to keep it paint where it needs to be. Know what your weaknesses are, and then you can figure out a way to work around it. I'm just going here and now I'm going to go cover that up, and then I can stencil up here. I can stencil fearlessly because I know I've got this covering where I need to stay out of. I'm not reloaded yet, so once you load your brush well, you can go a long distance before you have to reload. This brush has so many bristles in it. It will hold an unbelievable amount of paint. It does a couple things. It's going to make your results a little more consistent because, you know, when you reload and start somewhere, it's always a little bit heavier. Also, it's going to reduce the amount of time it takes you to stencil because you're not constantly reloading. And because I took my time down there, it's going to be dry up here. Still haven't reloaded yet. And I can see with this one that it's starting to cover pretty well. I may get by with 2 coats, we'll see. And one of the things that makes a difference, I'm going to reload just a little bit. One of the things that makes a difference, I'm stenciling a light color over part dark, part light background. So it's going to take just a little bit more. Because I just reloaded, I lightened my touch considerably. But it's going to take a little bit more to cover that evenly. I want to peek. See that little edge on the background? It looks like it's shadowed. Love it. Okay, getting just a little dab more paint. Always tap it on my paper towel over here. Make sure it's dry. No different than painting wet over wet. You want to make sure, because if it's not dry underneath and you go to stencil over it, you're going to dig it up and have some messy areas. Painting is a big part of being patient. It's just another thing I am not. So they always say painting is good therapy. It is. It teaches you a lot. I just might be able to get 2 coats on here. Again, I'm kind of tapping a little bit heavier because I'm getting real close to needing to reload. And I think I'm going to have to get this last word on here. Okay. There's a little Maddie in the background barking. Can you hear her over there? Just reloaded, so I want to make sure I have a light touch. And if I have any messy edges, it's because I pushed a little too heavy on it. I used to think stenciling was a little bit boring, but I kind of think now it's a little bit therapeutic because it takes the stress out of painting. And by that I mean I didn't have to worry about all these little fussy, perfect lines. I can just go right into worrying about painting it fun and the decorative part. Now, when I did my first coat, I went in and touched up these little areas where the bridges were for the cuts on the stencil. I'm going to do that the same thing with the, what is this, light line? Yeah. And that just will give that continuity of looking a little more hand painted. So we'll just go in and connect these little bridges. So you can see there's a lot of different things you can do to these letters. You could have just left them, we could have just stenciled them with the light lime and not worried about going in with this like a shadow effect, but I think that adds so much. It gives a little more depth, and we've got that stuff going on in the background, excuse me, in the background, so it really ramps it up quite a bit. I think as this is drying, I'm going to need that third coat on there. But I'm going to skip it for now. But you can tell on yours if you need the third coat. And I think, can you see, where's my little camera here? Can you see it's just a little bit mottled? I can see some of the background through. So in order to get a nice heavy coverage, you can see the difference on those. I'm going to need that third coat just to beef that up and really brighten it up. Now, if you don't want to do that drop shadow shift thing with the stencil, I did not on the larger words. I just went in with my brush, my Epic script liner, and I just went ahead and did this little bit of line work right here on the side. Now, if you load your brush correctly, you should be able to paint a very nice long line without reloading. So I painted all of that without reloading. So basically you're going to get the same effect that you did with the drop shadows by using just the liner along the side. And I just do it on the right side and across the bottom, and that will give you that same look. Whoops. Okay, Chris, don't be messy. Trying to speed up. I talked about being patient. Don't do what I do, do what I say. Not right, Jen?
So you tell me every day.
Uh-huh. So we can go through here and just add this little bit of line work on the side. And this is, I love doing this. I think this, you know, when you do something that makes such a huge difference, I think this is one of them where you can really, those letters just start to pop out. Now, before I do any more on that, I want to talk a little bit about the design I put in here, because we're pretty much finished with kind of jazzing up. These are finished, these are finished. We just need to add some design in the letters. And I decided that they didn't really need it, but I decided it would be fun. And I like to do fun things with designs. I think, excuse me, I think that's what sets them apart. You know, that one more thing you do that really makes them like, wow, that is so cool. And adding a stencil design on the letters was just really a fun way to kind of jazz these letters up. And there's a real simple way to do that. And we're going to go back to our stencil. And I'm going to use this template, and then I'm going to use another stencil template on top of that. Maybe we can go in just a little bit more here. Okay, we'll do the S. It seems like it's the closest one here. So I have, this is the stencil I used. You just need something that has a small design in it. And I was looking, this is part of a mini, this is the Tim Holtz mini set. It has these 3 stencils in it, which are, I like to use stencils that I can use over and over and over again. The little tree stencil, this is, I use this a lot, not by itself, but it's a really good base coat for a tree, and then you can work your magic on it. If you want to add birch trees in the background, this one is nice. And I've used this Nordic stencil. It's great. You can put design on Easter eggs. You can use it on Santa's suit. You can use it to jazz up letters. I think any small design is a fun design to use. So I was looking at other ones that would work. This one is really pretty. Has a lot of tiny design, the floral. I don't know what that says. I wouldn't use that. I have no clue what it says. I don't think it's English. Huh. Jen, does this, you know what
I
that
think it's
says?
just like those arches.
No, the word,
Oh,
the
down here.
words.
I have no idea what that says.
This little sweater motif, I use this over and over, and this one has snowflakes. Who can't use snowflakes and some Christmas words? So this little mini set is a great one to have. And this was another one that I pulled out of the packaging. I thought these would work just as well. And the way you can tell is just take the stencil and lay it over there and think, you can see, oh, that design would look really cool down there. What about the little stripes on it would be kind of cool. So you can play around with different stencils to see what would work. And let me have that,
This one?
not macrame knot, yeah. I was thinking this one would work as well. And if you use something like this, I wouldn't use this part. I would scooch it over and kind of center this busier part on the main segment of the letter. So you get more design. You don't want just open holes. You want something with a little more design on it. Does that make sense right in there? Another thing I thought would be kind of fun is you could use a stamp. So if you have a stamp, you could put your stencil down and stamp over top of it and stamp your design onto the letter. And I'll show you how we're going to use this as a template to create that design behind there. You know, if you don't have stamps and stencils, you could use anything with texture. And a lot of you have that mesh that has that little cross hatching in it. Pop that little thing down there and use it. So there's a lot of ways that you can create a really fun, interesting design. And that's all we're going for, design. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. So I've got my stamp or my stencil in position. I've taped it back down. And I'm just going to take my stencil and slide it underneath so that, oops, let me go a little bit more. Okay, can you see what my issue is? I don't have it over here to the edge, so I'm going to move this, anchor this side down. We'll just go that way. I want all of those. Now, once I put my stencil down, I still want to pay attention to where that design is. Don't just put it in there and expect it to land in the right place. So I don't want,
Saying your broadcast was paused, should resume shortly. This is saying your broadcast was paused and should resume shortly.
okay.
So if we might
It
have
says
one-
we're pausing, so I'm gonna wait just a little bit. Let me know when we're back on. 'Cause
we're back on.
okay. Just a, what do you call it, brief intermission. All right, so I have my stencil in position. I just slip the other one underneath, kind of look where your design is, wiping my brush off. I don't want a real heavy design. I want a soft one. So I'm just gonna take, where's my little painter's pal? See this R? I don't want to get that in there. I just want to do the S right now. Back to swirling. I want a soft design. You got a dark underneath. Look at that, just like that. Didn't get much over here. Oh, there we go. So we've got that on there. All right, so I want to go to the R. Put that in there. Cover that up. I'm gonna put one over here so I don't have to mess with too. And I'm going to swirl that on there. Can you see why I don't like messing with tape? It would just take forever to move tape. And lift it up. We've got a little design on that one. So I can continue doing that. And I was thinking, okay, so what if you don't have one of these stencils and you want to put design on there? But, you know, we can just go back to the old-fashioned. Just going to grab my liner. I'm going to thin my paint down and do what we do best. Just add some little strokes. Oh, you know it would be cool if you put different design on each letter.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah, well there you go.
Okay, I learned something, because I never would have thought to put that mini stencil under the big stencil.
Yeah. If you put it on top, you're not going to get the edges real
Right.
well.
I never would have thought to do that.
I've tried it both ways, and it works out best if you lay it underneath.
Patty said it's a great tip using the double stencil.
Yeah. That
I
way
agree,
you.
Patty.
Yeah. Okay, so I've added a little cross hatching on the letters instead of the stamp. So then we'll just go back and find my little. You need some little design to break them up. So we're just going to add some little dip dots on there. Just to give. Look how it brightens it up. Oh my gosh, what a huge difference. Like the little eyes are opened up. And even on these, just adding that bit of brightness, huge, huge change. To me, the dots are what makes it. Isn't that funny? Just that little bit. And if you think it's too dark, add some more on there. You know, you can add little dots in there just to kind of keep brightening it up. Now remember, we are going to add that little bit of line work around the side of it as well. So once we put that on there, that's going to tie it all together. Chris.
Kathy said that she loves the double stencil idea, would never have thought to do that. I'm with you, Kathy, me either.
It's just a really, really great way to utilize those stencils as working tools. See what a huge difference that little bit of line adds. Pretty cool, huh? So you can do the shift drop shadow, or you can just go in and add it with your brush. If you're not good at line work, use a stencil. I mean, that's why we have these tools, is to help our painting life just be a little bit less stressful, a little bit more fun, a lot more productive. We're going to add little dots in here just to keep that little bit of dot thing going on. But look how much this brightens it up. Now, I'm looking at this. Once you get all your lettering on there, I decided I needed more. Let's go back to this one. I needed more shading around the outer edges, so I went back and added even more darkness around the outer edges. Anytime you do that, what's going to happen is it's going to make the center just glow that much more. Oops, let's go back out here. Okay. And you can see the difference between this one and the edges, and just adding that much more darkness around it. Just pulls it all toward the center. Okay, so we did that kind of quickly. I mean, my goodness, an hour, and it's almost completely finished. Hopefully you learned some new.
I learned.
I kind of, my little stand here is going sideways, so. There we go. I thought I was gonna have to lean over it. So, hopefully you learned some new tips, tricks, and techniques. The stencil is more than just a stencil. It's a tool that you can use to help expedite some of your painting, using that lettering stencil as a template to add design. Super easy, keeps you from getting it on the outside edges where it gets kind of messy and then you have to go back and clean it up. Again, you add that little bit of line work around the edge. If there's any problems, you can clean it up that way. So there's always a little way that we can fix just about anything. So remember, we've got the, get this up here where you can read it, Spring Fest. I always have the worst time trying to find out where the camera is. Spring Fest.
Yes.
I'll just do this. April 15th, 16th, and 17th. And this is Bless This Home I'm teaching. It's going to be filled with all kind of cool things. And then Gnome Grown as well.
Don't forget about the contest. Remind
Oh,
them.
all right. So if you want to win this set of 3 absolutely wonderful brushes, post what you've done with your stencil and your creativity. Tag us, Cover Distributing, and post it on Facebook, and you could be the lucky winner of these 3 amazing brushes. Woo! Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today, and hopefully we'll be back before too much longer. So keep your eyes out. We'll let you know ahead of time what's going on. Keep track on our Facebook page because we have some great things coming up. So we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.